Okay, hello everyone. It is 7:30. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. So, for those who don't know, my name is Catori Langley. I'm going to be doing the IG takeover today. I want to thank DC Now Events. Thank Nell so much for inviting me. Thank you all, and hi everybody. Thank you all so much for all the engagement that you guys have been giving with my article and my YouTube video. I appreciate it so much, and I'm kind of excited to kind of do this. This is my first one. So again, thank DC Now Events for having me. Today's topic is going to be based on my article that I created, which is going to be the 4 tips to keeping a healthy relationship during quarantine. Now, I know quarantine is pretty much coming to an end, but I wrote the article about 2 weeks ago now. And it went up on the DC Now blog page, so that's how we're discussing it today. So I'm going to get started. If you guys want to ask me any questions, there's a little question box at the bottom. So you see it at the left-hand side where that question mark is. Put your comments in there. I'm going to be answering questions as I go. We do have a moderator that'll be kind of keeping us on track. So if you want to say anything about anything I'm talking about, just drop it in there and, wave, send us some hearts, let us know what you guys like, some fire while we're going so we know how everything is going. So thanks. Okay, so out of the 4 tips that I wrote about, the first one I wrote is going to be diversify and save. So one of the things that I've noticed that since we've been in quarantine is that people, I guess the new norm is online dating. So the thing that's interesting about being on quarantine is that I've noticed that there were so many people who are now, jobless or temporarily out of work are now working from home. And I think no one expected for, a quarantine to hit and for the things that we're going through to happen. But now that we're in it, everyone is scrambling, trying to figure out other ways to make money, other ways to save money. So if you guys watched the video, and even if you didn't, the first thing that we thought of was diversify and save. And that was actually something that my boyfriend Jeffrey added to the topic. So while diversifying and saving, he was pretty much just letting you know that you can always have multiple streams of income. And right now, everybody's on quarantine, so you probably see more people ordering Lyfts and, Uber Eats and those type of things right now. So if this is a perfect time to kind of get into that field because there's a demand for it. So you're diversifying what you usually do by doing something a little out of the box, but something that's a demand for it. And even right now, if you're not, quarantined or laid off, you can still be saving your money. I mean, it's crazy how much you can take a small amount of money, like $15 here and there, and put it in a savings account and realize that when quarantine is over, you have way more money than you started with. And it's always a good time to do this. I wouldn't just recommend this during a quarantine, but I think one of the hardest things about being in relationships long term is one of the things is like money and people having issues with money and finances. And the one thing you would hate is for your relationship to end because of money. I feel like it's such a stupid thing, but it's such a big thing that everyone kind of fusses about. So if you guys took, just a small amount, you and your spouse, or even you by yourself, and just kind of say, hey, this is what we're going to do right now during quarantine, and let's just see how we are when we come out of it, I think it'll really help. And then right now, if you have bills or anything piling up, you can kind of use that extra money you had to pay for that. Hi again, for people who are just joining. My name is Catori Langley of Tory Talk with Catori Langley is the name of my platform. That's a web series and a podcast. Thank DC Now Events again for letting me, go take over their live tonight. For those just joining, I'm discussing my 4 tips to keep a healthy relationship during quarantine. So the first tip we just mentioned was diversify and save. So now we're moving on to change your surroundings. And I cannot stress change your surroundings enough. I'm sorry, I have a question. Let's see. Okay, when's the best time to bring up the money convo in a relationship? Okay, so I do know that bringing up money is a very uncomfortable conversation to have. And I'll say this, being as though up until this relationship, pretty much every other relationship I've been in, I've made more money than my spouse. And it's always a hard conversation to have, I think, because, you know, sometimes people just feel like I don't want everybody knowing my finances, but I do feel like if this is somebody you really want to spend a significant amount of time with, someone, you know, who you really love and you're very interested in, I think, there you go. You can bring it up. For me, I brought it up with Jeffrey maybe like 4 or 5 months in. And it was kind of more so he was just around, so he kind of could see some of the ways I was moving and things I was spending my money on. But I do say talking about finances early in a relationship, I think is way better than waiting till it's too late, because you could be in a situation where it could be with someone who just doesn't manage money the same way you do, or look at spending the same way, you know, that you do. And it's all fine in the beginning, but 2 and 3 years in, or you guys are trying to buy a house together, or you're trying to, you know, even go on a vacation, and you're realizing how you're trying to spend your money is not the way that they're trying to spend their money, or how they save their money, and you kind of realize what they spend money on. And I would say about 3 or 4 months in of dating someone, you can kind of see how they move. And I think that's, if you're comfortable, that's when I would definitely start to have that conversation. So thank you for that question. Now again, the second tip is change your surroundings. So what Jeffrey and I did, which to me worked out very well, because when quarantine hit, it was a week before my birthday, and I was unable to do all the things that I had planned to do. And Jeffrey lives in Baltimore, I live in PG County, and we're already an hour apart. So when quarantine hit, we were kind of like, oh, what are we going to do? We don't live together. How are we going to continue to kind of stay together and still build, because our relationship is still so new? So we decided to change our surroundings. And what that kind of meant for us was we did a week at his house and a week at my house. And I think it really worked for us because, you know, in quarantine, we're all bogged down. We're all sad. We're all trapped in the house. The only time we get to go out is when we're going to the store. And that's like, nobody wants to do those supply runs. It's so scary at this point. But we would go to each other's homes. We would be able like to pack a bag, and we would go to the grocery store. And it kind of always felt like we were going on a mini vacation, just to pack up and just go 40 minutes down the road. That was a suggestion that I had. Also, if you guys live together and you just couldn't go, you know, to someone else's home, I would have definitely said for you guys to just go out. So we did a lot of walks to change our surroundings. We did picnics. We did a lot of exercise, a lot of jogs. Because I think when you get to be stuck in those 4 walls, and I definitely say not to do it irresponsibly, of course, because it's still, you know, a pandemic, but just that little bit of fresh air, or that sunlight, or just being able to walk in a neighborhood that isn't yours, or, you know, something like that, I think really helped. And whenever I felt like we were getting bogged down, Jeffrey and I both was like, yep, let's get up, let's go out, let's take a walk. Or, okay, we've been here for 4 days, let's pack everything up and let's head back to your house. Because even though it's something so simple, just changing that surrounding was like so beneficial for us. And I would definitely recommend it for however longer that we're still, you know, in this quarantine, because it just was really great. Again, for people who are just joining, Catori Langley of Tori Talk with Catori Langley, I'm discussing the 4 tips to keeping a healthy relationship during quarantine. It's a video that I actually made on my YouTube channel, as well as a blog that, thank you DC Now Events for posting it. Thank you guys so much for interacting with it and engaging with it so much, which is why we're on this Instagram takeover today. I went over 2 topics already. The first tips were diversify and save, which was just diversify and save your money while we're in quarantine. The second tip was to change your surroundings, because, you know, you get so bogged down being in like these 4 walls. So getting out and moving around is normally going to help. You know, you feel like you're still dating, you're still doing things, and you're still being able to be active. The third tip that I wrote about in my article was compatibility and understanding. I feel like this might be the biggest tip, because for me, I'm in a new relationship. But I would say even people who are in long-term relationship. You guys are 5 and 6 and 7 years in. You live together. Y'all are used to being around each other all the time. But I think when we're in, regular days, I can leave out and I can go to work, or I can go hang out with friends. I can run to a bar and he can do the same. And it's like right now that is no longer the case. We are all stuck together 24 hours a day. And I think very small things can become large problems right now while we're going through quarantine. And I've noticed that it really showed me how compatible and understanding we both can be in such tense situations, because he gets on my nerves sometimes, and I'm sure I get on his nerves a lot of the time. But it was more so realizing that, hey, this is really not that big of a deal, or this may just be something small we're making big. So I would definitely say, the tip that I put in there was just, understanding, the person that you're with, and understanding that you can just take a moment and you can go into another room. You can sit and, come back and talk to the person if you got into like a little tiff, but understand that this is not the end all be all, and we can always make things work if we're just listening to one another. And even if we don't necessarily agree, just always trying to find, understanding in the person's point, I think would really help, especially when you're in a situation where you can't get out, and even after quarantine. Okay, we got another question. Okay. So what made you come up with these dating quarantine tips? Okay. Great question. So again, I have a YouTube channel, which is Tori Talk with Catori Langley, me. And I'm always looking for different ideas and different topics. And usually when I do my interviews, I'm always interviewing someone else. And it's always, about them and trying to promote their business or promote what they do. And a lot of people were kind of telling me, hey, Catori, we never hear much about you as the person. And I'm like, oh, crap. Okay, you're right. I really haven't said much about me. So in quarantine, I was like kind of bouncing ideas off of Jeffrey, like, well, what can we talk about? Because I had done a lot of IG lives at that point, and I was like, I really want something that still gives the feel of my traditional show, but then also kind of gives a little twist. So for those who don't know, my boyfriend's name is Jeffrey Perkins. He is a professional photographer and videographer. So he had all of this camera equipment with us at all times. And I was like, it'd be dope. Let's just sit and interview each other and have a conversation about how we're kind of faring through this whole thing. Because we have been, like you see the memes and stuff on Instagram and all the headlines saying it like the divorce rate is sky high and everyone's calling all these people and everybody's breaking up and trying to kill, their significant others. So we more so thought it was kind of funny, because it was like we seem to be fine. We're getting along fine. We're learning new things about each other. So we were like, I wonder if other people are experiencing the same things we're experiencing, or if other people are kind of like having a tough time at it. Like we wanted to start this, just kind of start the dialogue and start the conversation. And that's how the whole thing came about. And it was just such a crazy kind of response to it, which was so great. And we were so excited because that's what we wanted. We wanted to hear from other people, because you're just stuck, in your bubble together. And we felt like we weren't able to, get out and really see other couples and experience other things. And we truly didn't believe it was going to be that bad, for everybody else in a relationship. So thank you for that question. That's how that came up. And of course, I put that out there. And I was able to put that out on DC Now blog page, and they posted it for me, and the response on there was great. It's doing good on YouTube. So it was kind of like a very relevant topic. And then when I was giving out those tips, it was just from, my personal experience. And I was like, well, maybe someone else could benefit from these. And Jeffrey and I just kind of sat down, and that's what we came up with. So thank you for that question. Thank you for everyone who are just tuning in again. This is going to be talking about the 4 tips to keeping a healthy relationship during quarantine. I know we're almost out of quarantine, But when I wrote this article, we were really deep in it, and I came up with 4 tips that were kind of working for me in my relationship that I wanted to share with you guys. So I went over the first 3, which were diversify and save, change your surroundings, compatibility and understanding. And then the 4th was still plan dates with one another and be as creative as you can. This is my favorite topic, but we have another question. So I'll answer that, and then I'll go ahead and give you guys the 4th tip. Okay, do you think a lot of relationships were already failing prior to quarantine? What made it easy? Thank you for that question. I honestly feel like a lot of relationships are always failing. And maybe that's just like the pessimist in me, but I think social media and being in a world where everything is like out there for everyone to see, that we're always thinking that relationships are going so well and everybody's getting along so great and everybody's vacationing and they're so in love. And then if you meet some of these people in person, you're like, y'all don't even like each other. I'll see you at a restaurant and y'all spend the whole time looking at your phones, not even conversing with one another. And honestly, I feel like a lot of relationships are that way. A lot of relationships, you know, people are constantly fighting with, you know, the infidelity issues or just lying about dumb stuff, or we just can't seem to catch up with one another long enough to kind of, you know, really spend time with each other. And I think they're beginning to fall apart more so now because there's no escape. So if you're getting on my nerves and I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to go out and I'm going to leave. You can't do that right now. So I think it's kind of forcing people to address a lot of the underlying issues they already had in a relationship, but now they have to actually sit down with their partner and say, okay, what are we going to do? And I think a lot of times people are looking at their relationships and realizing there wasn't much there to begin with. So I think that's where they were already at, but I think the quarantine was just like putting everything in a pressure cooker, and now you can just see it on a wide scale how our everyday lives are probably keeping our relationships together more than we really knew. And this really put it to the test. So thank you. And yes, so the 4th tip is still plan dates for one another, be as creative as you can. So this was one of my favorite tips because when quarantine happened, like I said, it was my birthday. I was supposed to be out of town. And I ended up still being here. So we kind of put something together at the last minute for like a birthday party. And then as the weeks kept going on and the months kept passing, it was like, wow, we're going to be in this quarantine for a while. And I kind of felt as though sitting in the house, not looking cute. I know poor Jeffrey was looking at me like, who is this crypt keeper? What is wrong with this woman? This is not the woman that I started dating. But, and then he started turning into a man from 1975. He had the big bush and all the facial hair. And it was kind of like, we're like, well, we can't, get all glammed up and go out and do things. And then one day we just kind of sat down and said, yes, we can. We may not be able to go and get haircuts and get our nails done and do all those things, but we can still, plan a date. So I planned the first date. Jeffrey and I, in January, we went to Milan. So we have like a love for like charcuterie boards and wine and all of these things. And I couldn't get us back to Italy, obviously. But we went to the store. I got like a charcuterie board. I got us all these different wines. I made a palette over the floor. I decorated my house. And we just watched movies. And honestly, even though we didn't go anywhere, it really felt like we were experiencing something fun. It was like, hey, I'm taking you out on a date tonight. And the excitement of it, I think, kind of worked for both of us because it felt like we were going to do something. And about maybe what would have been a month later, we actually made the video that's up on the YouTube channel after a date that he planned. So, that's kind of just my personality. I was like, hey, I planned this date a month ago. It's your time to plan the new date. And he was, a good sport about it. And we had never gone on a picnic. And that's one of the tips that I put into the blog. I think picnics are great right now, especially because it's the perfect way to social distance. Like, you can go get you a giant blanket so no one's going to sit near you guys. And you can, again, go to the grocery store, get some of your favorite things, and, you know, kind of just sit out and spend time with one another. And that's what we did. We made sandwiches. We got like some sparkling wine. We took our speaker out there. There was there weren't a couple, but some group of friends who were out. They were so far away, and they were having a picnic, and it was such a beautiful day out. And it was like, wow, look what quarantine kind of like pushed us to be creative. And that's just people who are already in relationships, but I gave a tip for people who are, you know, maybe you met the guy/girl of your dreams right before quarantine hit and you never got a chance to go on a date. I mean, Zoom is popping right now. You already always had FaceTime. It's kind of like, sis, if he can't take you on a Zoom date, I don't think he's the one for you. And same thing for you guys. Like, they should be kind of showing you how much they care and how creative they can be. And I think more so than anything else, that's kind of what this quarantine has kind of brought out. People are, you know, making masks. People are, you know, doing all these dances and all this stuff is just coming out, and you're able to be so creative. And I feel like that is just because of the quarantine. It made it so perfect to be creative with your spouse. And then I think for me, even if I was just meeting someone and we were just trying to figure out dating, if they told me, girl, Catori, put your clothes on, get cute, I'm going to be calling you on Zoom at 7 o'clock, we're going to have a date, and they had like some sort of creative thing planned, like that to me would have meant so much more than they probably would have ever known. And it wouldn't have costed them a dime. You know, I think it's more so just showing the effort. And I think a lot of times, even when we're out of quarantine, people don't show effort. People like to say, oh, well, you women always want to spend all our money going to restaurants and things like that. And I've always said, well, people who live in DC, obviously, we can go downtown. We can go to a park. We can go for a walk. There's so many other things you can do that won't cost a dime. It's just about having that kind of foresight and just caring enough to want to do something like that. And one thing that I will credit, one of many things, but one thing I will credit Jeffrey for is that when he wants to be romantic, he's really romantic in those ways. But in the way that I am, this kind of quarantine made him think about things differently. Like, oh, maybe I could have just decorated that, or maybe I could just pop here and do this, because it's not going to cost us anything. And he's been really good with that. Let's see, another question. And don't forget, you guys can add questions down at the question box. It's a little question mark down there on the left-hand side, and you just drop your comment there, and I'll put it on the screen. Let's see. Do you think people will want to use dating apps more post-quarantine? I honestly don't feel like dating apps will ever die out. I think dating apps are probably going to be popping even more so post-quarantine, because I just feel like right now, if you were in quarantine and you was just swiping just for fun, I think the amount of matches that you probably would have made while we've been on quarantine, now you kind of have to go and see some of these folks. And I think that dating apps are not all bad. I think if they're used in the way in which they're supposed to be used. Okay, thank you, Renee. And about, you know, they'll help connect people. And I think that that's going to help people get out of their shells a bit, because not everyone is like a loud type of boisterous personality like me who wants to just walk up to people and start a conversation. And I think, you know, dating apps will help with that, and dating apps will continue to keep people together and continue to make people meet for whatever your reasons may be. My PR agent, Renee Kelly, is on. Hi, Renee. Just wanted to let you guys know that up and coming, and on the 17th, I'm going to be doing a Instagram live interview with the chairman of One United Bank. That is the largest Black-owned bank in America. I was talking to the CEO and chairman. I really want you guys to definitely tune into that. It's going to be great. It's a perfect time for that conversation right now. We're really trying to, you know, buy and support Black-owned businesses, and this is a Black-owned bank. So we can say all the things, you know, with the bad history about Bank of America and Wells Fargo and all those things. Well, we don't have no excuses now. The largest Black-owned bank in America, One United. So I will be talking to the CEO in a couple weeks. So I definitely want you guys to, you know, check into that when it comes out. Yes, it is. Oh, exactly. So it's called Blackout 2020. That's going to be the hashtag. So we're going to talk about it. The actual blackout day is in July, but we're going to give you guys some time to kind of get yourselves ready to black out successfully on the day. So you definitely keep follow that. We have 5 more minutes. So if anybody has any more questions, again, my name, yes, next Wednesday. Again, so that'll be next Wednesday when I have the live. Again, my name is Catori Langley. I am the host of Tori Talk with Catori Langley. It is a podcast. It's a web series. You can find it on my YouTube channel of the same name, Tori Talk with Catori Langley. You can also follow me on Instagram at Tori Talk W for with Catori, Catori. You can also find my podcast on Apple Podcasts. Definitely check out my website, ToriTalkWebSeries.com. It's a lot of great content in there. That's where my blog is. So you'll find this blog that we're talking about today with those 4 tips, as well as you can find it on DC Now Events blog page, because that's where I originally wrote it from. Thank you guys for joining. Again, thanking DC Now Events for publishing the article. Thank you guys so much for all your interactions. I will say, since quarantine has come to an end, do not think that these tips are the only things you can use while in quarantine. You can definitely use these post-quarantine. All of these tips are just things, and again, I'm not a relationship guru. I'm just telling you some of the things that have worked for me, and I still have relationships. So, I mean, I don't know if that says anything, but that's kind of what worked for me. And I think all in all, it's really just about, you know, understanding your partner and being kind to one another. We're in a time right now when there's so much like hateful things going on. So being kind, listening, appreciating the person that you're with, appreciating the relationships that you're making with one another, whether they're, you know, friendships or significant others, they're important. We have got to stick together. We have got to, you know, put some positive things out here in the world. And that's another reason why, you know, I made the video and wrote the blog, just to give you guys a nice laugh and something positive to think about when we have so much stress. You definitely looking for a quarantine, babe. Oh, Lord. Well, you're a little late. Quarantine's almost over. But if you haven't already, you can definitely go and check out my blog and read some tips to keeping you a quarantine, babe, or snagging you one if you haven't already. And again, thank you guys for joining. Thank DC Now Events again for the last time. Catori Langley. That's Tori Talk with Catori Langley, and that's Catori, last name Langley. Please go follow me after this. Definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel of the same name, Tori Talk with Catori Langley. Please go check out my article on DC Now blog, the 4 tips to keeping a healthy relationship during quarantine. You can find it there. Yes, please slide in my DM. Okay, well, True Grill Fest is giving you guys the okay to slide in the DM, so please do that after this. But serious inquiries only. I understand. These are serious times. So again, thank you guys so much. And until next time, thank you guys again for the opportunity, and bye. Make sure you go and check out the blog and check out the YouTube channel and watch the whole video. Then you get to see Jeffrey and I and how we kind of interact with one another. So until next time, bye everyone.